Hello, this is Chuck Ridgway, Automation Technology Manager at Horner. Thanks for joining us for another Tuesday live stream. Now, very often on this channel, we get pretty technical here, between application tips and advanced programming techniques. Sometimes we'll demonstrate some pretty complex applications here on the bench, but in general, it can be pretty technical. Now, today we're going to take a break from that, and instead, we're going to give you a little bit of important product guidance. So here's our topic for today. Should you upgrade to the XL Prime series? Now, to help us with this important topic and with this discussion, I'm going to bring in our product manager, Mr. Casey Gardner. How you doing today, Casey?
Hey, not too bad. How's it going, Chuck?
It's going terrific. So, last summer is when we launched the new XL Prime series with 5 new OCS models. How has that gone so far?
Well, time's really flown by, say that much for sure, but it's gone pretty well. We've maybe made some things smoothed out probably since the launch a little bit, but for the most part, it's gone very well for sure.
Terrific. Always when you have a new product, especially a new product line of OCS controllers, there's going to be some things that need to be worked out, and it seems like we're making our way through those. Now, what do you think really has been the biggest hurdle or the biggest challenge with this project or with this new launch of the OCS XL Prime?
I would say some unforeseen challenges that we kind of ran into were with some of the approvals. I know not necessarily from our standard. We typically schedule that and know what to expect pretty well, but in terms of some of the entities we work with for approvals took much longer than we really expected from a paperwork and overall process perspective. I think some of it is maybe just overall backlog with the industry for that matter, but I know UL approval was a big one that took much longer than we expected for sure.
Yeah, and without UL, a lot of customers are really hamstrung. They can't really, ship their machines. Now, from a UL perspective, which approvals do we have on the XL Prime series?
Sure. So there's, for most of our products, we do Class 1 Div 2 approvals, which cover the type ratings of up to 4X. So that's going to be what we have on the Prime selection as well.
Terrific. So Class 1 Div 2 along with the type rating. Awesome. Okay, now I mentioned a few minutes ago, or a few seconds ago, I guess, that when we launched XL Prime, we had 5 models, and now we have 6. So talk about that 6th model.
Sure. So the X5 was a product we had developed. I mean, it was about in 2018 or so now. That was a hybrid model. It was before we had a micro OCS line. So it was a compact unit that we tried to have some specialty capabilities to still offer a lot of the XL performance, but in a smaller package. So with that, we made some overall memory restrictions where it only had 8,000 registers instead of 50,000, and only 1,000 of which were retentive instead of the full 50,000, like some of the other XL series. So again, for a lot of applications, we've got some really happy X5 customers that were still able to utilize that, but we saw room for improvement. So this was an area for an X5 Prime model, keeping it in the Prime family, but still offering all the performance and expanded register capacity, and keeping that same form factor and IO count.
Nice. Yeah, what a jump, really, from the micro up to the Prime, from a few thousand or maybe only 1,000 retentive registers up to 50,000. Very cool. Okay, awesome. So for the next 15 minutes or so, I'm going to review kind of all the different factors that go into deciding whether one should upgrade to the XL Prime or not. But from your perspective as product manager, what do you really think is going to be the primary driver for folks to decide they want to upgrade to the XL Prime?
I think availability would probably be the first one, and that's not to say that, again, the XL series is just completely gone. We still have a great operations team that is forecasted very well and still have a steady supply of a lot of the XL series product. But in general, especially the industrial market, it's something where, I mean, the XL series, like the XL4 and XL7 products, are almost 10 years old now, if not older. So those designs, as great and consistent as they've been over that time frame, we were able to take a new design and make it very seamless to transition to in order to get some performance gains, but also to have full control of that supply line going forward and be a much better availability.
Yeah, I mean, that's key. I mean, one thing the semiconductor industry has, one thing that they've kind of proven recently is that as they come back online and increase their capacity, their desire is to manufacture new parts. So, in the
Yep.
industrial realm that we're in, just like you said, I mean, we're dealing with products that need to have a 10 or 15-year life cycle. So, just by chance, quite a few products have these 10-year-old chips in them. The semiconductors aren't that thrilled with manufacturing those, so you got to be ready to replace them. And that's what we've done. Now, luckily, we're so nimble as a smaller company that's really responsive. We can react, whereas a lot of our competitors can't. So we've picked up a lot of business. Cool. Okay, so one thing I want to mention is that when we're done with the presentation, I'm going to bring Casey back in, and we're going to talk about one more product, and so you're going to want to stick around for that. Okay, thanks, Casey. We'll talk to you in a few minutes. Now let's take a look at how we're breaking down today's topic. Okay, we're going to start out by comparing the XL Series OCS and the XL Prime Series OCS. Now, that's something we've done before on the channel, but it's important for this discussion that we all get back up to speed on how those series compare and contrast. We're going to go through all the reasons why you might not want to upgrade, and then all the reasons why you might want to upgrade from whatever you're using today, probably the XL Series, up to the XL Prime Series. And then we're going to go through some different applications, some different use cases, and talk about why in specific applications you might want to upgrade, and we're going to make specific recommendations on what you upgrade to. All right, so let's get started. Okay, so let's start with the XL Series OCS. Now, this is today our highest selling OCS product line. It consists of 5 models: the XL4, EXL6, EXLW, XL7, and EXL10. Now, two of the most popular models, the XL4 and the XL7, were released, as Casey mentioned, more than 10 years ago. And then the other 3 models, EXL6, EXLW, and EXL10, they've been refreshed in the last 5 years. So that's generally why they have the E in front of them. That's for enhanced. Now, as Casey mentioned, these products are not scheduled for obsolescence, but the supply chain is under pressure because of some of the age of some of the chips on board. Now, let's take a look instead at the XL Prime Series OCS. That's our newest OCS product line, and it consists of 6 models. So the equivalence of what we just talked about in the XL Series, plus that new X5 Prime with all the extra memory and all the extra performance that we've added there. Now, most of these models were released last summer, with the X5 Prime released just a couple months ago. And really, the XL Prime was designed to be an easy upgrade for existing XL Series customers in anticipation of potential supply chain issues, and also with a desire to increase performance and also modernize. Now, we would be remiss in a discussion about upgrades if we didn't also mention the fact that later this year, second half of the year sometime, we've got another new product line coming out for OCS, and that is Canvas. So for those of you who have seen some of our preview episodes here on the channel, you'll have learned a little bit about Canvas, but let's review here. So Canvas is a series that's been designed around a multi-core CPU. So what is it about the multi-core CPU that makes it special? Well, you can have a dedicated core for logic and a dedicated core for graphics. So that means super fast logic scanning and an all-new advanced graphics engine. Also with the product, you're going to see a streamlined and sleek look and feel. And we have several models that will be released as part of Canvas. So we've got a 3.5, 4.3, and 7-inch single Ethernet version, as well as a 7-inch and 10.1-inch widescreen dual Ethernet version. So that's Canvas that you'll see in the second half of 2023. Okay, now getting back to our comparison between XL Series OCS and XL Prime Series OCS. So let's first talk about how they're the same in a lot of ways. They've got similar housings and the same screens and overlays. The cutout is the same. The I/O options haven't changed. The COM port options haven't really changed. Now, the one little caveat, the reason for the asterisk there, is because on the dual Ethernet versions, the 7 and the 10 for Prime, you do have to use a USB to Ethernet adapter for the second LAN port. That's the only slight difference there. But everything else is the same. And the fact that so much is the same makes upgrading as straightforward as possible. But there are some differences in several key areas that we need to highlight. First of all, there's an all-new Horner-designed system-on module in XL Prime. Now, every Horner product, every Horner OCS controller and RCC controller has a Horner-designed SOM inside. Just about every product has a Horner-designed SOM. We'll talk about that at the end. But anyway, a SOM is a circuit board that has all the key components like the CPU and the flash memory and the RAM and all those sorts of things. The fact that it has a new SOM allows us to release it with a faster CPU, giving us quicker scan times. It's got a larger and faster gate array. Now, the gate array, or FPGA as it's called, that's what handles all the high-speed counting, so that gives us more capacity with XL Prime. You don't have to choose between 2-channel and 4-channel high-speed counting. You just get 4-channel, right out of the gate. And then the big thing, in addition to the speed capacity increases, is the fact that it's based around a new type of memory to store all the variables. And that memory is totally non-volatile, totally not dependent on batteries. So what that means is we have a very low dependence on batteries with the XL Prime series, absolutely no rechargeable batteries with their limitations in terms of long-term reliability as well as environmental performance. And the only battery you'll find inside of Prime is a simple coin cell that's only used for the calendar clock. So those are the key differences with Prime versus the standard XL series. Now let's talk about the reasons why, as an OEM or as a automation user, you might not want to upgrade to the XL Prime series, okay? Well, and most of these reasons are the same if you're an OEM machine builder. They're the same reasons you would give regardless of what product that you would need to swap out. First of all, the reason you might not want to upgrade is because the XL series is not obsolete. Now, we have some concerns about how the supply chain is going to look in the short term and the medium term for sure, and even the long term, but it's not obsolete. Secondly, you might not want to upgrade because change costs money. Just making drawing changes and bills of material changes and those sorts of things, that costs money. Now, one thing I haven't talked about is the fact is that the programming changes between XL series and XL Prime series are very, very minimal, almost no changes at all. So really there aren't any real programming changes there. But even changing drawing numbers and bills of materials, that does cost some money. Also, OEMs know that new products are risky, right? Anytime you've got a new product, no matter from which manufacturer, there's going to be some ironing out time, some time to get through any early bugs or early wrinkles. And we've been able to work through those with the XL Prime, but there have been a few of those as well. Also, you may not want to upgrade because testing takes time. Anytime you make a change to your controller, whether it's a PLC or an OCS, you do need to do some system testing. You can't just throw it in there and just assume everything's going to be fine. We anticipate you're going to have no problems whatsoever. However, we insist you do need to do system testing. Also, some people may not want to upgrade because they know that Canvas is just around the corner. So in some cases, they may be waiting for that to change OCS model. So these are all legitimate reasons that need to be considered when you're talking about whether you should do an upgrade or not. Okay, now let's talk about some reasons why you would want to upgrade. First of all, because of that new SOM, XL Prime series gives a nice performance boost. The larger your program in your application, the bigger performance boost you're going to see because that extra horsepower really can be seen when you have a large program that is going to be executed by that new CPU. Also, another big reason to upgrade is just what I talked about earlier with rechargeable batteries. Those are the limiting factor when it comes to the environmental performance of an OCS. In other words, what temperatures it can operate in from a low and high temperature standpoint, and also from a long-term reliability standpoint. What that means is that over time, you're going to have to eventually replace that battery. It could be 10 years, it could be 5 years, it could be 3 years. It all depends. And obviously that affects, your machine. So you've got to have a battery replacement process and you've got to make sure that battery is charged, all those sorts of things. So a good reason to upgrade is the fact that the XL Prime just isn't dependent on batteries as much anymore. And then finally, the big one that Casey mentioned, the supply chain for XL Prime is significantly stronger right now than the XL series, and that's probably going to continue because of the fact that the XL Prime uses so much newer chips. Now let's talk about several different specific cases when it comes to different applications or different customer profiles, why certain customers would want to upgrade, and if so, what the recommendation would be from Horner. Okay, so let's start with your typical OEM machine builder who's using one of our most popular products, either an XL4 or an XL7 or maybe the EXLW. So those are certainly very popular products, and he's using them in an indoor environment without real temperature extremes, so batteries aren't quite as big of an issue as they might be otherwise. So what would our recommendation be here? Well, frankly, we would recommend that you start the transition to the XL Prime series and schedule system testing at the very least. Because again, anytime you're going with a new model of any controller, Horner or not, you really need to do system testing. So that would be our recommendation. And the primary reason for the recommendation there would be it's a low risk upgrade. And again, supply chain wise, you're just going to be in a better position. And if you do the system testing early, then you have the option of running either the XL4 that you've always run in that case, or the XL4 Prime. So that would be our recommendation for the typical OEM using one of our more popular products. Now let's take a look at the OEM machine builder who maybe has designed his machine around the EXL6. Remember, the EXL6 is not the one that's pictured there. The EXL6 is our 5.7-inch controller. 5.7-inch for years was the most popular touchscreen size, but that's really changed. Now 7-inch is much more popular. So if your standard OCS, your XL series OCS, is a 5.7-inch screen model, the EXL6, that's an extra factor to consider. So we would recommend, for instance, you should take a look at transitioning to Prime, but maybe what you should look at is switching to the XLW Prime, which has the exact same cutout, runs the exact same program, but just has a little more space on the screen for graphics. So instead of maybe making two upgrades, upgrading to the XL6 Prime and then to a 7-inch later with an XLW, we would recommend that you take a look at maybe making that happen in one leap and go straight to an XLW Prime so that you don't have a scenario where suddenly maybe 5.7-inch screens aren't available to us anymore and we have to prematurely obsolete the XL6 Prime. So just something to consider there. Okay, now let's take a look at case number 3. So this is an OEM machine builder that's designed their machine around the EXL10. That's our 10.4-inch, 4.3 aspect ratio, 640 by 480 screen. So let's say it's your typical factory application indoors. Again, battery's not a consideration here. Well, first of all, definitely consider transitioning or at least testing your system with the XL10 Prime so you're covered in any supply chain issues. But also keep in mind that in the future, you're going to want to consider possibly transitioning to Canvas. Canvas has a new 10.1-inch widescreen that will be available. And also keep in mind that the 4:3 aspect ratio on the 10-inch and on the 6-inch, so XL6, XL10 models, those aspect ratio screens are certainly much older and they would have the potential for being obsoleted more quickly. So if you're using the 10-inch, consider using one of the 10.1-inch widescreens, maybe the Canvas coming up, or maybe, and this might be a tougher transition, maybe you designed the EXL10 in many years ago and you have a relatively simple application. Maybe it's a scenario where it makes sense actually to go down to the micro OCS 10-inch. So there's a couple different options there, but certainly those are some things you should consider. Okay, the next use case is geared around particular applications. So maybe oil and gas industry or water, wastewater, where often those applications are in a little bit harsher environments, especially those that are outdoors. So our recommendation in those cases, let's say if you're using an XL4 or an XL7 in an outdoor environment, you definitely want to start your transition to XL Prime as soon as possible and schedule that system testing as soon as possible because of the fact that you can really take advantage of the increased reliability of not having rechargeable batteries in your system. Also, some other thing to consider, and that is that some of you may not be aware that we've had an extended temperature option with the XL4 and XL7 for many years that can extend your temperature range all the way down to -40. And it's probably a good idea to use that option on your machine if it's going to be exposed to those temperatures. So that's a second consideration you should really take a look at. Okay, our next use case is an agricultural application, similar to the last one in terms of environment, being outdoors and those sorts of things, except this is a big difference here. With some agricultural applications, maybe some gear that's only used during harvest time, for instance, maybe you'll have systems that are only used seasonally, maybe only used for a couple weeks out of the year during harvest time. So that means that they're powered down for long periods of time, often most of the year or at least months. So in that scenario, that puts a lot of strain on the battery. So again, you can really take advantage of a lack of a battery with the XL Prime series. And so we would recommend, again, as soon as you can, transition your system to the XL Prime series and schedule that system testing. Now, if you do have the scenario where your equipment is used seasonally and that season is not cold, it's not the winter time, then you wouldn't necessarily have to invest in the -22 extended temperature version, because when you're actually using the equipment, it's actually during much warmer normal temperatures. So that's another consideration there. Okay, next let's take a look at another XL7 application, but this one is a process application, and maybe it's based around the EXL10. It wouldn't necessarily have to be the XL7, but it's an indoor application, not outdoors, but it's an application where you've got really heavy, complex trending and a lot of graphics and those sorts of things. So certainly in the short term, we would want you to qualify the Prime series model that is the equivalent of what you're using and schedule your system testing so you're ready to use that if necessary. But also, if you're doing a lot of trending and a lot of graphics, you're going to be able to really take advantage of some of the new capabilities when Canvas is released. So that's certainly something you should consider. And if you're using a 7 today with a lot of trending and those sorts of things, you might want to consider upgrading to the Canvas 10 when it's available, because the more you're doing on the screen, the more people would like to have a little bit of extra real estate there for all those complex graphics. With Canvas, you're going to have the ability to have as many as 16 pens on a single trend graph. So a little bit of extra real estate would be definitely useful for that. So there's some considerations with that use case. All right, now we've got a couple of X5 Prime or X5 use cases that we want to talk about. Let's start with a mobile application for X5. Because X5 is really shallow and it's compatible with 12 volts, you do find it used in some mobile type applications. And so if you're one of those customers that is using it in a mobile application and it's holding up well for you in your environment, then that's good. But maybe you're in the boat where the capacity and the performance is limiting you. Maybe you really need more retained variables. You really would like faster scan rate to really take that application to the next level. Well, in that scenario, definitely jump right over to the X5 Prime and get that system testing scheduled, because you're going to get 5 or 10 times the memory and much faster scan rates, as Casey mentioned in our discussion earlier. Finally, let's talk about another use case, and that is maybe using an X5 in a building automation application where you're interfacing with the public or with operators or what have you, and maybe you are dealing with playing videos on the screen for operator help or training purposes, whatever the case may be. So if that's your scenario, then again, you should definitely be ready for the X5 Prime from a supply chain standpoint. And because there is extra horsepower on the X5 Prime, it should do even a better job on the videos that you're currently playing. But consider this, consider that with Canvas, there will be a 5-inch version of the Canvas, and it's going to do fantastic with things like video. So that's a possible upgrade in the future you may want to look at when the 5-inch Canvas is available, and video is a key part of your application, in addition to the control that you may already be doing. Very good. Okay, so that is, I guess, 8 different use cases for different scenarios and different considerations and some recommendations that we're making there. So I'm going to sum up these slides here with one slide, and then I'm going to bring Casey in for one more topic. So to wrap up today, really any current Horner XL series user should be prepared to move to the XL Prime series based on the fact it has a better supply chain. Now, being prepared doesn't mean switch over as fast as possible. What it could mean is put the little bit of work in to convert the program, get a unit in-house, get a system test executed using the new unit, so you're ready to transition smoothly and in a planned fashion instead of an emergency fashion when maybe in the future the supply chain dries up a little bit or has a dry spell at least for the XL series. Again, system testing is always key. You don't want to skip that part. We've done everything we can to make that go as smooth as possible, but you still need to do your part and do the system test. Also, if you're using one of those 4:3 aspect ratio screens on the 6-inch and 10-inch models, consider a transition to another screen size, at least in the long term, because those 4:3 aspect ratio screens will certainly be the first ones that receive the obsolete notice. And for any of those of you who have advanced graphics, advanced trending, or advanced video requirements, Canvas is going to have a whole lot to offer. So be aware of that for a possible future upgrade, maybe later this year or maybe sometime next year. Now what I would like to do is I would like to bring back in our product manager, Casey Gardner. How you doing, Casey?
Hey, not bad.
Good. So hasn't changed since the last time I asked you how you're doing, I guess. But anyway, one product we didn't talk about through the presentation so far is we didn't talk about our 15-inch OCS models. What's the plan with the 15-inch?
Sure. So the 15-inch has been a product where we've had significant supply chain issues compared to a lot of our other products. Most of the others have been seemingly unaffected, or we've been able to adapt and keep supply going very well. Whereas the 15-inch is not shipping in the volume that we would like it to, for sure. It's also one of the Horner products that it was one of the only one that uses a SOM that is not Horner designed. It uses a third-party SOM in that design. So we're in the final stages of a new 15-inch design that's going to be a very similar form factor to the existing 15-inch and have a lot of very similar capabilities, but with basically the 15 prime spin on it. So a lot of that same performance capabilities, and possibly a new canvas model down the line as well. But kind of in the final stages where I would expect probably a summer release of the early production units for a 15 product.
Terrific. So if you're a user of the current 15-inch product and you've been frustrated by supply chain challenges, not being able to get the product and other issues, hang in there with us a little while longer. As Casey said, we have a new model coming this summer, and that things will start to improve later this summer. Okay, thanks for that update, Casey. I thought it was important to update our viewers on the 15-inch. All right, thanks for all your insight, and we'll see you again next week.
Sounds good.
Awesome. Okay, so let's wrap up, and then we'll close. This is the point of the presentation where I let you know that we're here every Tuesday at 2 o'clock, whether we're fully live like today with Casey joining us when he can, or whether we're pre-recorded or somewhere in between. So again, you can watch us live at 2 o'clock on Tuesdays, or you can watch us on replay like a lot of you do. And don't hesitate. Give us your comments. If you're watching live, give them to us in the chat section. If you're watching on replay, we'd love to see your comments and your questions in the comment section for you replay watchers. A reminder, we're celebrating 10 years of the Horner Lighting Group. Don't forget to check out a lot of the great Horner lighting videos on our YouTube channel, along with all the great automation content. Next week, back to the technical content. So next week, by request from one of my colleagues in California, we're going to talk about controlling a smart motor with a Horner OCS over Can Open. So we've covered Can Open a few times before. Can Open actually we have, I think, a top 5 video all time from our live streams that's Can Open related. I think our Can Open How Does It Work video that we've done on our Tuesday live stream series is among one of our most popular. So we're going to cover different ground in this particular session. We're going to talk specifically about smart motors and Can Open and the Horner OCS. If you haven't subscribed to our channel already, I would encourage you to do so. It doesn't cost anything, and we promise we won't harass you with a bunch of extra emails or anything. And if you choose notifications when you subscribe, then you might just be notified every time we go live or every time we post a new video. Of course, that's up to YouTube. Their notifications are a little hit and miss sometimes. Okay, so thanks for joining us this week. We hope we provide you with some good guidance, and then look forward to working with you on technical topics over the next couple of weeks. All right, so until we see you again, let's all get out there and do us some good.